38 years ago, I was looking for a job. I see an ad in the paper. It says, do you have no experience? Do you need flexible hours? Do you want to make some money? And as a college student, this seemed like an excellent job for me, so I applied. Turns out it was at a Honda dealership, and they needed a car salesperson. And so I became a car salesman, selling both new and used cars at the Honda dealership. Now, I obviously didn't stay with the car sales career, but the car sales career will always have a fondness in my heart. And the reason why is simple. I learned the strategies of sales closing at both a Honda dealership and later at a Nissan dealership in the early 1980s that have carried me through many different situations in life leading to success. It's helped me with my own business. It's helped me with the clients who I work with, and it's made me a better therapist. I joke around that of all the things I learned in graduate school, in my master's degree, and in my doctoral program, the most useful skills that I actually learned were when I was selling cars back in the early 1980s. This course is about therapeutic closing. I'm going to teach you the art of closing, just like a real estate salesperson learns, just like a car salesperson learns, just like a life insurance salesperson learns. And the reason why is because closing is absolutely necessary to get a client to own the solution that they're seeking in therapy. And so welcome aboard to the course. I am excited that you're here. This is going to be a wonderful opportunity for you to learn a new set of strategies that are going to help you both in your business as well as on the clinical side of things with your clients. So let's take a look over here at the board. You can see I've written a lot of things on the board. You can also see that my handwriting isn't very good. And so don't worry, anytime I write anything on the board, there will actually be a link right below the video to the board notes. You can open up that PDF and you'll be able to get a clear version of anything that I put on the board throughout the rest of the course. But this video is titled The ABCs of Closing. And it's not the ABCs because ABC is the beginning of things, but because ABC is an acronym in the world of sales closing. And ABC stands for Always Be Closing. This is the great thing about closing. We can close at any point. We can close multiple times. We can close multiple levels. We should be seeking opportunities to close the deal with clients. Whether that's in the first call with a client when somebody calls and asks questions about the services that we offer, or whether that's in our later encounters with a client in therapy when we're helping them to make choices and do something different. Now, I've written a definition of closing. What exactly is closing? How does it differ from marketing? How is it different from sales? By the way, yes, I have my academic degrees in counseling and in leadership, but I'm also in the process right now of completing my MBA. In fact, I'll complete my MBA on July 4th of this year. And my MBA is in business marketing, and a component of that course is marketing. A part of that course is, of course, management. A part of that course is, of course, business, finance, and those sorts of things. But my focus has been on business marketing and sales. And there are numerous definitions that are given of what closing is. And this is the definition that I like the best. I created this definition probably from taking a composite of the different experiences that I've had and the learnings that I've had, both in academics as well as on the counseling side of things. And so let's take a look at this definition and look at the important elements of it. Closing is different than sales or different than marketing. Sales is the process where we help a person to move to the point where they make a decision. Marketing broadly can be about sharing our message with other people, whether that's on the internet or whether that's on a billboard. That's, of course, a form of advertising, which is a form of marketing, or building those relationships. These are all the background things, but there's going to come a point in the process of sales and marketing where we have to ask the client to look inside of themselves to make a decision and determine to take a specific course of action. This is what closing is all about. Closing is about asking the right questions. The definition that I put here on the board is that closing is asking the questions or giving the suggestions. Think hypnotic suggestions. In many ways, sales closing is a hypnotic endeavor. Asking the questions or giving the suggestions that cause an internal search We want the person we're talking to, whenever we ask these questions or give these suggestions, to look inside of themselves for the answer. So we want to ask the questions and give suggestions that cause an internal search for an answer. And this answer influences the ultimate choice and the ultimate actions taken by the client. So right off the bat, you can see how this definition of closing is a useful tool in increasing the efficacy of our marketing. Because in our marketing, when we're sharing our messages, and in the sales process, when we're explaining what it is that we do and what services we offer, we are going to be sharing information. But there has to come a point when we ask the client to commit, to make a decision. And it's at that point that the magic actually takes place. It's at that point that, although the client doesn't have the tools and the resources to necessarily make a lasting change yet, that comes through the process of our counseling or our coaching or our hypnotherapy services. But there comes a point where our client has made that commitment, and in making that commitment, they're excited about the future opportunities, and they've turned away from that which has been causing them distress, and they enter into hope. And so closing fills our clients with a sense of hope. When they hang up that phone call, where we've used a closing question in order for them to commit to booking their first session, they hang up with a smile on their face, no matter how much difficulty led to the phone call that they made. When they're in our office and when we use a closing question to ask them to commit to a process that's 180 degrees different than the experiences that they brought to the office, and they set aside addiction, or they set aside depression, or they set aside negative communications, or they set aside interpersonal conflict, or they set aside whatever it is that brought them to our offices, there's a sense of hope. My clients often need a box of Kleenex in the office, not because they're crying with misery because of therapy, but because they're crying with joy, because it's often the very first time that they were filled with hope. And those hopeful moments come as a result of me being an expert in using sales closing techniques from the beginning of my encounters with the clients until the end, when I finally discharge a client and my clients move on into their own real world, hopefully then impacting other people in positive ways. The work that we do can be influential on a multi-generational level, on a community level. It's really pretty awesome. So let's take a look at the key words that are here in this definition, and we ask the questions. Questions, without a doubt, are the heart of closing. Questions, and asking the right questions, lead to the right answers and cause clients to look within themselves. Hypnotic suggestions that we give to clients, they don't come from us. They come from within the client. As a professional hypnotist, I know what suggestions to give to my client because they've told me what suggestions they will respond to. I listen attentively during my intake process. I probe. I ask additional questions. I gather more information. And what's amazing is that clients have within them the answers which they need to bring to the surface. And by using closing statements correctly, I'm giving suggestions that bring their own internal strengths, their own internal resources, their own internal ideas to the surface. This internal search is essential for success in therapy. It doesn't really matter what tradition or what type of therapy you're offering. In neurolinguistic programming, we call this the transderivational search. It's when a question or a suggestion that I give causes a person to look inside of themselves for the answer. When my client looks inside of themselves and determines the answer, and the answer here is an essential component of the closing process, my client's eyes light up. They're excited. They're filled with joy. And the reason why is because I'm not doing something to them. Rather, I am doing something with them. I'm sharing the experience. I'm guiding them into success by using closing questions and closing suggestions and closing methods to have them look within themselves to finally discover the answer that to this point has eluded them for so long. Influence is another powerful and important word. Influence is the ability to lean into a situation that to this point hasn't experienced much movement or much change, and literally use the leverage of language patterns to move a person closer towards their solution. Influence is rarely talked about in counselor training programs. It is discussed sometimes in hypnotherapy training programs. It certainly is in the field of neuro-linguistic programming, but it's amazing to me how many people have really never focused on leveraging the ability to use language patterns and words to move a person closer to the point where it's easier to solve a problem. And this metaphor of the lever is going to become something that's going to be really important to us as we learn the principles of influence throughout this course that can help us to accomplish that objective. Ultimately, our clients respond. They respond when they have choices, when they feel empowered. And sales closing in therapy, whether it's on our website, that's going to cause them to look inside and choose to click the button to book their first session, or whether it's in our session where we present them with choices that they can choose from to help them step into a new pattern of behavior, emotional regulation, relationships, community engagement, etc. These choices are essential because people have a need to feel that they have autonomy. If I impose on my clients the solution that I think is best, my clients will almost always respond with denial, with resistance, and with opposition. It is easy for us as therapists because many of us have used these same techniques to solve our own problems. I don't know a therapist out there who didn't get in this field at some level or another to fix themselves. And because we learn, hopefully, because we learn how to find these solutions in our own life, it's easy for us to see a new client who comes in and say, well, you should do this. Here's an idea for you. Let me share with you my experiences, because we almost always project that the best way for them to recover is the way that I recovered, but that's not necessarily true. The best way for my clients to recover is the best way for my clients to recover. And when they have choices that they've derived from inside of themselves, they can commit to a process. And so when they make a choice, they can then take an action. And the action, the follow through, is essential. Here's the biggest problem in sales and marketing. It presents a message. And that message, we can conceptualize it as a brochure or a web page, which is really often an electronic brochure. And the reality is it gives a lot of information. It tells about the services. It tells maybe the prices. It tells about the therapist who's offering these services. It tells the research and how many people have benefited from these ideas. Maybe there are some testimonials. But if there's not a choice presented, would you like to book a session now? Or would you like to opt in and get some additional free information before you make a decision? Our clients simply X off the electronic brochure or drive past the billboard without dialing the phone or without clicking the button. It's essential that our clients take an action. Many clients have come to many therapy sessions and they've heard about successes. They've engaged in a process that was insightful to them, but they never made a significant change because they never took an action that was different than the actions they took before. And they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over again, expecting different results. The different results come and the action comes by using the leverage of closing to be able to move a person towards a choice which gives them a specific action to take. The great thing about therapeutic closing is that it's action oriented. You're never going to be bored in your sessions because you're always going to be working towards new actions with the clients who you work with. So why is it that therapists don't close? Aside from ignorance. And I don't mean ignorance in a negative way. I simply mean ignorance with the definition of the word ignorance. Most of us went into counselor training programs, hypnotherapy training programs, coaching training programs, and we don't spend any time on sales, closing, or the business aspects of building a practice and those sorts of things. And so the result is we simply don't know what sales closing is and how we can actually use it in a therapeutic way, both to help a client discover our services as well as to leverage that client towards change and a new action that can determine an entirely new course of action in life. We literally have never been taught, because most of us weren't car salesmen first, the therapeutic value of the sales closing process. Aside from that, I put 7 reasons up here. There are probably 700 reasons why we either don't close or why we don't have effective responses to the closings that we do. Number 1 on this list, though, absolutely without a doubt, it's fear. We don't ask a closing question because we fear that a client will say no. When I was selling cars, John Crane, who was the general manager of the Nissan dealership, he wanted me to learn how to become the number 1 salesperson. So he took me out on demo rides and taught me how to do a demo ride with a customer, explain the features, how to listen to the customer, how to engage in the sales process on the demo ride in a car. And as we were coming back towards the dealership, he taught me that this is when it was time to ask my closing question. And he gave me scripts to use. And in this course, I'm going to be giving you scripts that you can use to help you close. And John said to me, he said, it's at this point, right when you pass the church, before you get back to the lot, that you turn to the client who's now driving the car and say to the client this: if we can get the numbers right when we get back and talk to the finance manager, would you like to park this car in your garage tonight and drive it to work with that new car smell tomorrow? That is an example of a closing question. If the client answers yes, bam, we know they've committed to the process to take the action to get the car and to drive it to work tomorrow morning. But the salesperson is often afraid to ask that question because what if the answer to the question is, no, I'm not ready yet. I need to speak to a family member, a spouse, or somebody else, or whatever oppositions that a client has to saying yes to that question. And many salespeople fear this answer. It is exactly the same thing for the therapist. When somebody calls on the phone and asks, usually the first question they ask is, how much are the sessions? Which, by the way, is a lousy place to start. So we have to answer this question to begin with before we can often answer the other questions they have. Now that we've answered their questions, if we don't ask them this final question, which is, of course, I have an opening on Thursday morning and I have an opening on Friday. Would you like to schedule your first session for Friday morning or for Thursday morning? That's an example of a closing question. We might get the answer, no, I'm not ready yet. Or, well, I need some more information. Or I'm going to call some other people. We are people too, just like clients are. And we fear rejection. And so fear is the number 1 reason why we don't use closing statements in our phone calls and on our website and our other marketing outreach. It's also the reason why in the therapy session, we are reluctant to ask our clients to commit to a choice and to take a specific action. We fear they might not be there yet. And I don't want them to say no too early. By the way, I never mind when a client says no. When a client says, I'm not ready to close yet, because it gives me information to continue working with them in the right direction. But fear is the overwhelming number 1 reason why therapists don't close in the work that they do. Number 2 on the list here In our closing, we need to do something that's almost contrary to therapy. Therapy is about helping people to feel better and live better lives. But people are motivated almost always by the avoidance of pain. Sales processes know that by amplifying the pain of the person, we can move that client towards making a decision to purchase a product or to close the deal. In therapy, I think it's important to recognize that not all of our clients have hit bottom, but they don't have to hit bottom in order to make a change. All I have to do is amplify the pain, even though they haven't yet had the experience, in order to help them make a choice. The third reason people don't close is that we've failed to connect the service that we offer to what the client's needs are. Clients often call us with one issue, but there's actually a deeper need. As a hypnotist, a lot of people call me for stop smoking. One of my clients, I'll never forget her. She was a grandmother. She was in her 60s. She wanted to quit smoking, and she said, I want to quit smoking. I'd like to book a session to stop smoking. But it turns out the real need, she didn't care if she smoked. In fact, she wanted to continue smoking. What she actually cared about was her 2-year-old grandson. You see, this lady had a diagnosis of leukemia, and she knew that her treatment would be far less effective if she continued to smoke. And she was looking for a long-term, she wanted to be a part of her grandchild's life. And the deepest needs were about relationship. It wasn't about stop smoking. And so in our closing, we always need to be connecting the service to the needs, the deepest needs, to love other people, to receive love in return, a sense of belonging, security, significance. And when our clients see that our services meet their deepest needs, our clients are far more likely to respond by making a choice and taking an action. Of course, the time that we spend with a client will be interpreted as the care we have to a client. So I see therapists all the time offering free 15-minute consultation, right? Don't do that. Offer a free consultation. Take as much time as you need. With one client, that might be 7 minutes. With another client, it might be 37 minutes. The reality is, don't bind yourself to time any longer. The reality is, our clients, just like children, get that you are worth less than my time, right? That's an important message. John Bradshaw taught us that in the 80s, that parents would say, it's the quality of time, not the amount of time, but the children got the message, you are worth less than my time, if time was not spent with children. We need to spend time with clients to create rapport and trust, which is the foundation that closing is built on. Sure, you've met the obnoxious salesperson who throws out those poorly timed closing statements and comes off sort of as a jerk. But you've also met that salesperson in your life who really helped you to make a difficult decision. Maybe it was about the house that you live in, or the car that you purchased, or some other important, financial decisions related to investments or life insurance or those sorts of things. And they took the time to really understand your need and match you with the best product. When I was selling cars, I was also in undergrad school at the time and then later graduate school. And so I fashioned myself as sort of the car therapist. My job was to connect them to the car that was going to be best for them. And I spent all day sometimes with clients in order to help them make the decision as to which car they should buy. So rapport and trust is really based on a foundation of how much time we're willing to invest in clients. This is true not only in the sales process of therapy, but it's also true on the therapeutic side. Never rush the process. One of the reasons that therapists don't close is because they literally don't ask that question. Would you like to drive the car home tonight, and drive it to work tomorrow morning? Would you like to purchase this car? They don't ask for a decision. Are you ready to commit to giving up your depression and stepping into joy each morning? That's a closing question. And it's a pretty deep question. And if we don't ask for that decision, our client will wake up tomorrow exactly like they woke up today, because we haven't closed them yet. And closing becomes an important part of the therapeutic process. One of the reasons why therapists do poorly with closing is if there is a choice and an action, there's a lack of follow-up. Follow-up is what helps a person to continue to move forward after they've made a decision and into the action. I view coaching as being with somebody. I am walking with them. I am experiencing the solutions with them. I was on swim team when I was in high school, and we would swim back and forth up and down the lanes, and the coach would walk up and the coach would walk down the lanes, and he was there with me as I did the work. This is, as we'll see later, an important part of the closing process, and therapists missed the boat to use the resources of technology to create onboarding experiences. If you're a therapist and you have a website and you're not delivering to your clients who booked their first session client information resources that can help them between now and their first session, you're missing a golden opportunity to help your clients experience deep levels of profound change using the technology that's at our hand. The seventh reason we often don't close is because we don't believe in our own product or service. And I meet therapists all the time who are filled with imposter syndrome or filled with self-doubt. And the result is, if you don't believe in the product or service that you're providing your clients aren't going to believe in the product or service either. So back in the early 1980s, Nissan had a car. It was called the Pulsar. Go ahead and Google it. It was the ugliest, crappiest car ever made. It had a 2.4-liter four-cylinder engine. They came in all kinds of ugly colors. It was the saddest, ugliest, worst car that Nissan ever made. It was cheap. It was inexpensive. But the Sentra, the Maxima, the little pickup trucks they had, certainly the 280ZX, and all these other cars they had were way, way, way better cars. And it was interesting. The entire time that I worked at the Nissan dealership, never once did I sell a Pulsar. I had people come in a lot. Hey, I'd like to find out about the Pulsar. I heard the Pulsar was affordable. Hey, do you have a pink Pulsar? That would make my girlfriend really happy. I mean, whatever it was they came in looking for, but I never sold a Pulsar. I sold a lot of Sentras. I sold a lot of Maximas. Cars that I believed in. And if you don't believe in the therapeutic services that you're offering, your clients are never going to close the deal. I'm really happy that you've joined me for this class. I have a lot of great content to share. I'm looking forward to each of the learning modules in this course, where I'm going to be guiding you step by step through using sales closing to enhance both your business as well as the clinical side of your practice.